Hi.
Oh, hey,
Sorry I'm
how
running
you
late.
doing? No worries. I'm
Just
like,
came out of
how are you
patient
doing?
consults. I'm doing well.
Are you still on your Whirlwind book tour? Are you back in the office?
I'm back in the clinic. Had a full day of patients yesterday and Monday, Tuesday, and today. So been fun.
Amazing. I want to tell you something kind of to take you away from your day to make you laugh. What's the big crisis going on in my kitchen at Daily Dose? So we've been sourcing young Thai coconut meat from this organic company in Thailand,
Uh-huh.
and there's now been a ban on export of it because they've been using monkeys to process the coconuts.
Oh my gosh.
Like that's our day in the kitchen. That would just take you out of your
How are
whirlwind.
they like what are
There's
they?
you can go online and Google Thailand monkeys processing coconuts. It's a thing.
They're well trained, apparently, right?
Yeah, no, they're very good at it and they don't seem to mind it. But so now there's been a ban on export. We've been, we prefer to use young Thai coconut meat over coconut milk just for the fiber and all of the
Yeah.
nutrition in it. But so anyhow, that's where
That's
we are.
hysterical. A day
Yeah,
in the
I thought you would
life.
think that's funny. Yeah, day in the life. Um, so we're super excited to take a deep dive with you on intuitive fasting, right? It's amazing. I'll tell you where I am. I did my first OMAD yesterday. So one
Oh,
meal a
cool.
day, if you haven't read the book. I felt fantastic. And I just want to tell you from a chef's perspective, in addition to all the many health benefits, my sense of taste when I do a long fast is so heightened. So sweet, sour, salty, bitter, that savory, like umami sense that you get. It's like every meal I eat after a long fast is like that scene in Ratatouille, right? Where they're
Mhm.
constructing like this flavor bomb. So that for me is such a big takeaway from this, where I'm touring a farm of sprouts we're using next week and picking out peppercress and broccoli sprouts and things like that. And I will go into that probably on an 18-hour fast because I know I'm going to optimize my selections to use in the kitchen. So that's so cool.
That is really cool. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's great stuff.
So, okay, I'm just going to start off. Did you think the topic of fasting would be so controversial when you wrote this book?
No, 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 no. The book is like so uncontroversial. To being in the middle of this when my day job is just consulting people online, and I wrote a book over the pandemic, end of 2019, throughout all 2020. It's born out of my clinical experience. And it's such something that I've done for the past over a decade with my patients. This whole concept of flexible intermittent fasting with this way of eating. I mean, it is ketotarian. It is the continuation of the ketotarian conversation, is what intuitive fasting is. And this whole concept of intuitively eating and intuitively fasting, mindful fasting or mindful eating. That's something that I've always taught my patients and built the physiological infrastructure of metabolic flexibility so you can have a more groundedness in your body because you have proper blood sugar balance, proper satiety signaling, normal inflammation levels, proper supporting gut brain axis, all that stuff. I know the science, I know the practical application of it, I know how amazing it is to see people achieve this for themselves. It's
Right.
such a positive thing. I was completely shocked that this would be spun into something controversial, because it's not. I mean, health is not controversial, but it's that word intuitive that apparently a certain sect of people have a militant sort of tribal cyberbully
Right.
effect on social media. It's really unfortunate, but I'm not paying attention to it really. I mean,
No, I think, eating for so many people is emotional, and you took, like, you are getting an emotional response, not a
yeah,
scientific response. And
yeah, exactly.
we see the benefits with our customer base in incorporating fasting in any of our eating protocols, but particularly in ketotarian,
Yeah.
and the success people are having. And I'm putting myself through this protocol to take it to the next level to help our team members and our customer support help guide people. And
Hmm.
it's just really cool what I'm seeing. And so I am a former marathoner. For 15 years I ran marathons,
Yeah.
and I like what you do because it's like a pacing. thing
Mm-hmm.
for me. So you're
Yeah.
not telling people go fast for a day, don't go
No.
out and run 26 miles, do a 5K. So
Yeah.
do your 12-hour fast for the first week. And that it's so doable. And for
Yeah.
someone who is around food all the time, this was really easy for me and
Mm-hmm.
awesome. And I'm seeing personal great results from it. So
Yeah.
if you could just, we have a lot of customers on, and also people that just want to learn more
Yeah.
about intuitive fasting. Do you want to just highlight your top 5 health benefits?
Yeah, sure. And this is like breaking news because let me just say this. I was with patients all 10 hours today. And in between consults, I saw an email. We made the New York Times list. Like
Awesome.
right before I came on here, I'm like, whoa, I
That's
called my wife real
amazing.
fast up. And that's, yeah. So we made the New York Times bestseller list under the health, whatever category that it is. Pretty cool.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So I'm
Congrats.
happy. I'm happy. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the top benefits of fasting. It's what we're talking about here is supporting metabolic flexibility. And that's why I love the Ketotarian food plan with intermittent fasting, because they complement each other. They are both two sides of the same coin of supporting metabolic flexibility. So both intermittent fasting and ketotarian way of eating, a plant-forward, clean ketogenic diet, supports beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is known in the research as the fourth macronutrient, or we protein, fats, carbs, and ketones. So it's a way to it's known in the research as an epigenetic modulator or a signaling molecule, meaning it does really interesting, cool things for our health. So it acts as a regulator of a lot of pathways. So it helps to lower inflammatory pathways naturally. Like your body naturally produces this endogenous signaling molecule, a natural signaling molecule, this fourth macronutrient called BHB, or beta hydroxybutyrate. So it lowers things like NF-kappa B, the COX-2 pathway, the NLRP3 inflammasome. These pro-inflammatory cytokines are that are high in a lot of people with autoimmune issues, people with mental health, like anxiety, depression, fatigue, people that are high metabolic issues. Almost all chronic health problems have inflammation as a commonality. So this is a natural anti-inflammatory that you're tapping into with both using food as medicine in a ketotarian way and flexible intermittent fasting. They're both supporting this. So another benefit is it increases or supports something called autophagy, which is cellular recycling, sort of our body's cellular renewal. If you break that word down, autophagy, it's the self-eating. It's our body's innate recycling system, housekeeping system that enables to support. It's a sort of an anti-accelerated aging pathway in the body. It increases mitochondrial biogenesis, supporting making newer, resilient, healthier mitochondria, which are needed for cellular energy. It improves and supports something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, supporting something called neuroplasticity, or making new neurons. It's the brain's ability to repair and mend and become more resilient. And it increases longevity pathways, stem cells, increases antioxidant pathways like the AMPK pathway, the NRF2 pathway. It regulates the gut microbiome because our microbiome has sort of this circadian rhythm similar to cortisol levels. So when I'm looking at on labs, I see this S-shaped circadian rhythm of cortisol throughout the day. When you're looking at the brain adrenal axis, you can also look at the circadian rhythm of the microbiome, and researchers are looking at this. Certain colonies of bacteria are higher in the evening, some are higher in the morning, and you have this wave-like motion throughout the day. It's almost like this microbiome clock, this gut garden clock. And fasting helps to recalibrate that. So people that have dysbiosis or bacterial overgrowth, people that have GI issues, it's been shown to be beneficial for people with underlying gut problems as well. So that's what I mentioned is a lot of things. But I think it's
Yeah, it's a lot.
summarized more eloquently with Paracelsus. Paracelsus was one of the fathers of medicine, known as the father of toxicology, the Martin Luther of medicine. He called fasting the physician within, which I think you and I talked before. But the physician within, that's what it is. That's this resetter, this renewer, this recalibrator. So all that fancy stuff that I was talking about, it's the inner doctor that's
Right.
repairing and resetting the body.
Do you know that I want to share this with you because that's always my teaching point with people. Paracelsus said that food was designed by nature to tell you what it was good for. So if you cut open a walnut, it's good for your brain, or you cut open a tomato and you see 4 chambers of the heart. And we always use that as a teaching point with children, because no one knows like vitamins or minerals when they're understands that when they're younger, but they can connect with the picture of what you're putting into your body and what it looks like. So that's so cool that you said
really
that.
Cool.
The other thing, we get a lot of questions from people that want to know. So we have a lot of Ketotarian customers on that want to know a couple of questions. So this is a big one, because a lot of our customers like to start their day with a green juice. So if you're having a green juice, which has no sugar, so no fruit, so think dandelion green, celery juice, cucumber, romaine, maybe, on 50 calories or under, will that still keep you in a fasted state?
Yes. So it's not all or nothing when it comes to
Right.
fasted. There's fasting mimicking states, and then there's a fasted state. So you can mimic fasting with things like that are low calorie and low carb, that would still mimic a lot of the same benefits of fasting. And because that's really no protein as well, I mean, it's very little amounts of protein, that pathway of mTOR, which is sensitive to protein, which could be in theory downregulated. And a lot of the longevity anti-disease pathways and science is centered around looking at the modulation of this mechanistic or mammalian target of rapamycin that's sensitive to extra protein. So if the drink that you were thinking of had extra protein but was still low calorie, I would still think, okay, maybe it's downregulating some of the stem cell autophagy stuff. But the fact that green juice is not that, I would err on the side of, if it makes your fast easier, then try it. And there's a place for these moderate green juicing protocols. It's giving the gut a break. It's allowing time to repair. And I would put it under the category of like a fasting mimicking way of doing it.
Right. Yeah. No, and I also like that you touched on in the book, and I've seen you speak about was what we always encourage our clients to do, which is to take minerals. And I think that's such a good hack, if you want to call it that, to stave off hunger pains, or just give everyone what's in the soil of the food that they normally eat, and it just supplies them. So that's super cool. I'm just going to look at our question list. So one of our customers said, so it can take up to 4 days to get in ketosis if you look at the science that's out there. But if you fast and go straight to a ketotarian plan, will you automatically be in ketosis?
No, not automatically, but I mean, it's going to speed it up. It's going to speed it up. Everybody's coming at their starting point, right? So their metabolic flexibility is at different points, and or the metabolic rigidity, their lack of metabolic flexibility. So you see some people that dip into ketosis rather quickly, and some people don't. So it depends on the person, but yeah, it's definitely the sweet spot's normally right around that time.
Right. So I have to tell you something. So I get this all the time, and I've been feeding people for a very long time. And I always get this question, well, what time do I eat? And we constantly, our customer support always gets this question, what time do I eat my breakfast? What time do I eat my lunch? And our response is always the same, to eat when you're hungry. And I feel like that people have lost touch, not only where their food comes from, but then how to work with it and how to put it in their bodies. And what I like, and also I think what's causing controversy, is you're just telling people to get in touch with their innate sense of eating, which people have completely lost touch of. So one of the questions that have come in is, when you are carb cycling, and you could explain what that is to people who don't know what it is, should I use a blood glucose monitor?
Yeah. So it depends on how biohackerish you are, right? I mean, I have patients that they like to get super granular and super data driven on this stuff. And sometimes it's needed, right? And sometimes they're not even biohackers, but it's a specific health case where you do need to be more specific about these type of things. Specifically ketosis with certain autoimmune issues or neurological issues where you want to get a certain threshold. That's really not what we're talking about here. This is more of a lifestyle. I want to support my health. I want to feel better. And I just want to be healthier. I want to be a healthier version of myself. So if you're coming from that wellness standpoint, it's up to you. If you are drawn to the biohacker side of things and you want to test glucose levels and ketone meters, it wouldn't just be the glucose. It wouldn't be just a glucometer; it would be a ketone meter as well
Right.
to test your body's glucose tolerance, your glucose, your insulin sensitivity, but also test your ketones. Because some people can dip in and out of ketosis very easily, especially over time. Some people it's harder, and it's not gonna happen overnight. It takes some time to build it, months to build it. This is a lifestyle change.
Right.
So I like keeping it simple. I mean, to me, it's like I'm going off of how I feel intuitively, and I want people to grow that mindfulness muscle for themselves. So that's really what I'm talking about in the book. And that's why I really don't talk about measuring ketones or measuring glucose or
Right.
getting super. Look, if there's a time and place for it, certainly I look at that data for my patients, but I don't think that the average person really needs to be that concerned with it in most cases. There's exceptions to what I just said, but for most people, they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think these data tracking things are great tools, but I also see people getting too tied to them. We have customers like, I had a terrible night's sleep because my Oura ring told me so, instead of focusing on the quality of their sleep and how to get that sleep, and with fasting protocols and with their diet and many other lifestyle choices. So I think like the biggest thing that I celebrate is that you just teach people try and get in touch with their own sense of what's
Yeah.
right for their body without
Hmm.
someone or a device or someone telling them what to do. So it's super
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. And I think that's part of the reason why even the book has gotten like the attention so in the way that the media and the social media certain social media communities have given it, because it's kind of a sad state of affairs that the idea that fasting could be intuitive is like it's radical, is really a sign of our addiction to food.
Right.
Because if fasting, believe me, metabolic flexibility times of fasting will be intuitive. It just will.
Right.
Not because
Yeah.
it's some punitive thing, but because we can go longer without eating.
Yeah, I know you touch on in the beginning of your book how food is just ubiquitous. I mean, I take my kids to Barnes and Noble and there's a cafe there. Like I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
shop for books and have food, and there's just a complete disconnection that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
and I mean, you're totally on point. It's just getting back to the way things should be, and
Yeah.
paying attention to your body and listening to signs and
Yeah. And there should be an effortlessness to it. There's a time and place therapeutically to dig in deeper fast because hey, I'm feeling better. I'm serving myself. It's a positive thing. But you're constantly checking in with your body. But you have the grace and the ability and the flexibility to go out of your fast whenever you want to. There's a measured awareness of serving your body in both ways and being there for yourself in the fast and using that fasting time as a mindfulness tool, but using eating as a mindfulness tool as well. One should not be scary. It's really not at all. I think, like I say in the book, sometimes the magic hides in the places we're ignoring, and sometimes people are use food as like a distraction or to numb some sort of pain. And I think that comes with a lot of charged like energy of like this is scary, but it's really not. I think we should really just get back to the basics, get back into our body's own metabolic flexibility, and a lot of stuff will sort itself out when we get there.
great. So if you can talk about clean carb cycling, and actually, if you take a step back before that, talk about people are confused about the difference between carbs and net carbs, which you clearly define in the book, which I think is
Yeah.
super important for people to understand.
Yeah. So total carbs are all the carbohydrates, all the sugars, all the fiber, all added up. And then net carbs are the total carbs minus fiber and sugar alcohol, if there's any sugar alcohols involved. So the reason why I advocate for a net carb approach when you're focusing on whole, real foods from the earth is because fiber has a really beneficial aspect of our bodies. It's very helpful for our bodies. So it supports gut microbiome diversity, it supports cardiovascular health, supports satiety, blood sugar balancing, so many good things. That's one of the I would say loving functional medicine critiques that I have on the conventional ketogenic world, that they end up fearing fiber and plant foods, and they shouldn't. look, there's a time and place that therapeutically some people need to be mindful of total carbs, even if it comes from a plant food. But the average lifestyle purpose of this is not to be super obsessive about this, because I think it can create some unintended consequences of orthorexia and stress and anxiety around eating foods. That's the antithesis of sustainable wellness for most humans. They shouldn't get caught up in that weird minutia when it comes to just focusing on healthy foods in a sensible way, in a strategic way. So net carbs are a way to educate people. The reason why I put it in the book is to educate people on the beneficial impacts of fiber, and educating them that it behaves differently in the body than other types of carbohydrates. So fiber, by its very definition, is a type of carbohydrate, but it supports something called intestinal gluconeogenesis and or IgN, and there's evidence to show that actually with most people it lowers insulin resistance, balancing blood sugar, which are infrastructural. It's like you need this to have a healthy ketosis level. So there are people, there's exceptions to what I just said, because I do know people that are insanely wildly insulin resistant, and for a time they do need to be mindful of their fiber for a time too. There's exceptions to what I just said, but that's like very clinical, very specific things. Most human beings don't need to be that obsessed about that.
Right. Right. Amazing. So then the other thing that we're seeing, and customers have asked, which is always challenging, is people come from a very, if you want to call it a traditional ketogenic diet, and move over to Ketotarian, which is a very clean, plant-forward plan. But they're still doing those like staples that they thought were strongholds of a keto diet, which is having things like zero Coke. So if you could just speak to a little bit about the dangers of what those artificial sweeteners and zero calorie things, and how they would potentially negatively interact with the ketotarian diet.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate them. Look, I'm not shaming anybody that decides to have those drinks randomly and they're part of your life. I'm not saying it's like canceling out all the good things you're doing, but I would just advocate maybe a better alternative for that, or have those things occasionally. I mean, I personally don't have them. I personally wouldn't recommend them. I don't recommend it in the book, but the body's amazingly resilient. People do crazy things to their bodies all the time. I'm not like, oh, I don't want to over dramatize it, but these artificial sweeteners like aspartame and sucralose are not the best for gut health. There's evidence to show it can really impact the microbiome in a negative way. And in some people, there's evidence to show, and in my studies as well, that it can increase insulin resistance, similar to regular sugar, an increased rate of diabetes. So it impacts the brain's communication and blood sugar regulation, and it impacts the gut microbiome, which also impacts blood sugar regulation. So not the biggest fan of them. So I wouldn't advocate that. And that's the bigger point of intuitive fasting and ketotarian, which is part of that same conversation, is that just because something's #keto or high fat, low carb doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. So the goal is not just ketosis at all costs. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that just because you're in ketosis doesn't necessarily mean it's good for your sustainable health, meaning that you're going to see some of the anti-inflammatory benefits of ketosis in that state. Of course, that's where you find a lot of the honeymoon period with people with the conventional ketogenic diet. And some people can go quite a bit. Their honeymoon period's quite a bit with it. There's no shame in that. But I'm saying just because something's better than the standard American diet doesn't mean it's optimal for long-term health. So we can get benefits from that dirty keto approach, but is it really good in the long term? So let's leverage the benefits of that: ketosis, anti-inflammatory, brain supporting, gut microbiome supporting, all that stuff. Yeah, but let's do it in a way that also brings in nutrient density, also brings in good fiber for your gut microbiome, also brings in good vitamins and micronutrients. All that stuff is what we want. So to me, it's, why should we be either or? Like ketosis and then nutrient density. Let's do both and that's what I try to do with Ketotarian.
Right. I see, in feeding people over the last 2 decades. We saw the same thing happen with gluten-free, where suddenly it became like this
Right.
halo, like, oh, it's gluten-free, it's healthy, and just
Hmm.
there wasn't a lot of education around it. So yeah,
Totally.
same thing's happening with keto.
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of your time. I know we just have 3 minutes. So I think the last, super fun question is a customer asks, what is your favorite patient success story that you saw with intuitive fasting that may have inspired your book?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I have one that just popped in my mind because it just happened 2 days ago. I don't say this lightly or flippantly. Like I get to see things on a daily basis, an almost hourly basis. And we go through some heavy things sometimes with people too, but it's a positive thing. The most recent one of the biggest, most recent ones, because I saw them all day today too. But the one of the biggest, like, wow, this is so freaking amazing, was this girl before the pandemic, right? We've always been telehealth. We've always been telehealth. We've always done webcam consults. But before the pandemic, sometimes people would fly in or drive in. They didn't need to, but they just wanted like that face-to-face human experience. Remember when we used to do that back in the day?
No.
But so these people flew in. They didn't need to, but they wanted to. And she was a girl and her mom. And this was like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And she was falling asleep in the consult. She had polyautoimmunity, multiple autoimmune conditions. She had type 1 diabetes, autoimmune thyroid issues, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. Like I could go on and on and on, like major issues. And she was young. She was like early 20s, like late teens. And her mom brought her out, and we went over her health history. I spent about an hour and a half, as I do during the consults, normally via webcam. And she kept dozing off. I mean, this is a girl that spent most of the day in bed. Like she could barely function. She had to drop out of school. She couldn't have a job because she was so chronically fatigued. And my clinic manager, we talked about it again. We talked about it back then, but we talked about it again because we just had her visit. And she said, yeah, she fell asleep in my visit with her too. So she kept dozing off, falling asleep, because it's quite a noticeable thing when you're sitting next to somebody who's just dozing off and falling asleep. You remember it years down the line. And I'm like, I know health and science can be kind of boring for some people, but it's not that boring. So she is completely different today. She moved states because she could and wanted to. She is not in bed at all. She doesn't take any naps. She used to spend half the day in bed or more. She does not do that anymore. She said, I have to do something. I have to do something every day because I have so much energy. So she's going around to she's in a new city. So she's going around to all these cool places that she can go to right now. Her doctor was able to dramatically decrease her medications. She's on half the amount of insulin. She's type 1 diabetic, so she always has to be on some, but she reduced her half. She's off of all her other medications. She has this vibrant energy. It is like two different people. It is like that dwarf that was like sleepy on Snow White and then to like happy.
Right.
It was like two different people. And like to
Amazing.
me, I'm like, dang, all this mindless negative chatter on social media that I saw in the book release, it's like it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Doesn't even matter. Because when I got back to the clinic on Monday and I got to see that, I'm like, all right,
That's why you do what you do.
that's perspective. That's
Well,
perspective.
I'll give you another one. So we
Yeah.
have a client who's on Ketotarian who has Parkinson's disease. She is in her late 50s, postmenopausal tremors. Her tremors have stopped and her symptoms are diminishing from the high fat content and good quality ingredients, all that kind of stuff. She's swinging kettlebells
Great.
now and
Wow.
doing stuff. It's like, wow, just with food.
Yeah.
So cool.
What the body's capacity for resilience and capacity for health never gets old to me. It's really cool to see, and I'm so honored and excited that we can partner with this. And you could bring ketotarian meals to life for people around the country. It's really a special thing.
Yeah, we're super excited, and we're so excited to incorporate intuitive fasting protocols and help coach our ketotarian clients through it, and actually all of our clients, because this just applies for everyone for health.
Certainly.
I want to do one last thing before we say goodbye. So we have a giveaway. Someone is going to get a 5-day ketotarian plan and a copy of intuitive fasting.
Awesome.
And if you're going to embark on the 4-week protocol, which is amazing, using the ketotarian meal plan for your first week for your 12 to 14 hour fast is super cool and awesome. So our winner is Danielle. I don't know if I'm saying your last name right, Artabasi. So our customer support team is going to reach out to you. We'll get you started with a meal plan, and we're super excited for this. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know your schedule is insane.
I'm honored to do it. I'm happy at any time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, super cool. And thanks for the book. It's super exciting. I'm so excited next week for my full day fast. It's my marathon next week.
You know who real fast before we go, Bobby Brown at Jenny Hutt. I talked to 2 people in the past 2 days. They're like, they love you so much.
Oh, and they love you too.
It's a small world. I'm like, how do we all know each other?
You know how I met Jenny? We met at XPT. So I love this.
That. With Gabby Reese.
Yeah, Gabby Reese and
Laird Hamilton.
Yeah, super crazy. But yeah, no, they reached out to me too. They're super excited about this partnership. So amazing.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you soon.
All right. Have a great night, Will.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
And congrats on the New York Times.
Thank you.
Epic.
So excited.
Go celebrate. Bye.
Bye.